Yeah, my name is James Hewes and I'm the Publishing Director of GN Publishing based here in Dubai. Welcome everybody to the conference. I hope you've enjoyed the first day. We've heard some really interesting stuff. I'm very well aware that I'm keeping you all from the drinks reception, so I've got a little timer in front of me that tells me when to stop, and I'll try and make sure that I stop before the timer tells me to. What I'm going to be talking about today is something that's very relevant for the market here, which is how to transform a traditional print-based business into something multi-platform and brand-centric. And really what I'm going to be talking about, let me see if I get this right, if I press the right button. There we go. What I'm going to be talking about today is a business that's only part of the way through that transformation. We are, if you like, the middle of this, I don't know what you call a caterpillar that's halfway becoming a butterfly, but whatever that is, we're halfway through that process right now. We started as a caterpillar. We have a clear vision of what our butterfly is going to look like. The transformation is not complete, but we think we're on the right track. And I really wanted to share with you today the steps that we've taken and the things that we've learned along the way, so that if you're in that process yourself, or if you're midway through it, that perhaps you can learn from some of the lessons that we had. So first of all, I wanted to start with the caterpillar, the beginning, where we were when we started this process. I took over at a business that was then called GN Magazines, and you can spot the first problem, in January 2013. And at that stage, the business consisted only of what you can see on this screen. This was in 2013, not 2003. We had 5 print magazines. We had no websites or any digital activity at all, and we had one event, which was the Wheels Car of the Year, which had been going, I think, 2 or 3 years, Amit, something like that? 5 years, Amit tells me, okay, 5 years. So we had one event. And basically, we had very good turnover, but we were only marginally profitable. And we were very similar to what India Today were describing earlier this morning. Single-digit profitability margin and a sense of, well, okay, what is the point? We need to really transform this business into something else. And crucially, we had one major problem, which is that 94.5% of our revenue came from print advertising, and only 5.5% came from everything else. And everything else was mainly circulation revenue. And that really does show you the relative importance of audience versus advertising in this market. Now, an overwhelming dependence on one revenue stream obviously creates a whole bunch of problems, two of which are, or two most important ones are, that if the market goes away from print advertising, then your business goes away. So this is an immense risk for us as a company. The second, and more interesting one, going on to what Peter was talking about earlier and what all of the speakers have mentioned in one way or another, is the cultural problem. You know, we are a business that was set up purely to do print advertising and not very much else. So all the skills in areas like digital, marketing, events, just weren't there, and we had to kind of go through a program of bringing those in if we wanted to achieve what we really wanted. And simultaneously, we could see that the market trends that were prevalent in the rest of the world were starting to come into play in the MENA region as well. Now, uniquely, I've seen lots of different graphs today. It's really interesting when you do the research for this and you type consumer magazine advertising trends Middle East, and you get 5 different graphs, some of which go like this, some go like this. I've seen graphs that say that consumer magazines are growing, that they're declining, newspapers are growing, newspapers are declining. I think overall, despite what most people have said, newspapers are still a really, really important part of the ad market here in this region, and they're probably going to grow. The print bit is probably going to grow over the next few years. I don't think that's an unreasonable assumption to make. But at the moment in the region, we're suffering from low oil prices, from instability, from a lack of tourist numbers, and so that's driving down a lot of the underlying market. So we have to be a little bit careful about making sure that we don't confuse a recession with a change in the fundamentals. But some of the fundamentals are going to change. For traditional print consumer magazines, at best they're going to be flat over the next 5 years, and probably there'll be a small decline. And there's one exception to that I'll come on to later. But digital and other media are growing very rapidly, and particularly in the transaction space over the next 5 years, I expect to see that as a major source of growth in this region. So where does that leave you all as an incoming publishing director in that business? You sit down, you look at all the things I've just shown you, and you do this. You go, oh my God, what do I do? But it was very important that as a management team, we sat down and we didn't panic. We made sure that we had a plan. We carried a towel, for those of you who know Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And so we spent the first 6 months of my time sitting as a group, as a management team, deciding what our plan should be. And I want to show you what we came up with as a way forward. The first thing we recognized was that we needed an overall strategic approach, and I wanted to show you that before we did anything else. Something very, very simple that we could make sure we could check ourselves against to see whether or not it ticked a box every time we were doing it. So that was really this strategic framework and a long-term strategic goal. So we had 3 arrows to our strategic framework: grow, extend, and expand. The growth one is about organic growth, recognizing that you can't just ignore the business you have right now. You've got to grow it at the same time as you're growing new aspects of your portfolio. That you need to extend your brands across multiple platforms. You've got to extend them across multiple territories. We are a business of one city in a region with an immense amount of opportunity. And you've got to expand your portfolio. You can't just sit on the brands you've got. Brands come and brands go. You've got to have a portfolio that is ever changing. And we said to ourselves, what's a stretching goal? A stretching goal is to move that 5.5% of revenue that wasn't print advertising to 50% by 2021. So that's the journey that we're on at the moment, to try and get to a position where we no longer rely purely on print advertising as our main source of revenue, but we recognize that realistically print advertising is still going to be a really important part of our overall mix. So we needed to recognize the factors that were influencing our transformation and the environment in which we're operating. And I wanted to just talk about 4 factors that influence this. And some of this is repetition because we draw very much on the research and the experiences that we get from some of the companies and some of the individuals that you've seen already today. In particular, the innovation report. It's really good that I've come straight after Innovations Consulting because we use their work a lot. It's formed the basis of a lot of our training, and it's formed the basis of a lot of our thinking. So it's no surprise that, the first thing that's influencing our transformation is mobile. You've heard a lot about it today, and I think it's really, really the most important thing in any publisher's business now. You've also heard from Google. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the statistics about mobile penetration because you've heard millions and millions of that all day today, and you know it all. I will just say that there's a very good, and I'll do a little plug for Chris, there's a very good FIPP special report on mobile that came out last year that, again, has got lots of really useful traffic, lots of useful data, rather, specific to the consumer magazines space. And I just wanted to pull out one bit of it that I thought was really interesting. First of all, let me give you a little anecdote, not an anecdote, just a piece of data that's relevant to this, to say that in our portfolio, in this region, the Gulf News portfolio, 30% of our traffic is already mobile, and we're planning on the basis that's going to be 50% plus in the next couple of years. So it's something that's very live, it's very real to us. But the one that was of interest to me was that in the Middle East and Africa, 80% of internet users own a smartphone, which is one of the highest in the world. But that only consists of a very low number of handsets. Now, the figure I've got here is 28 million, but it was something that may not be entirely correct, but it was a very low number, certainly under 50 million. And that's in a region of 1.25 billion people. So there's clearly a huge potential for growth in the years to come in a region like this where fixed line internet is never going to achieve the penetration levels seen in Western Europe and the US. So that's really the first factor that we're thinking about. And how does that affect our day-to-day work? It means that when we sit down and plan new projects now, we plan them with mobile first. So the first thing we draw on the whiteboard is the mobile screen, and we think about how our digital products are going to look on that, and then we worry about what we're going to do with desktop and tablet afterwards, if we worry about it at all. And I'm going to give you an example later on of a project that's been developed using that methodology. The guys who did that are here in the room, and you can have a chat with them later. The second factor is events. And again, innovations, and Alvaro mentioned events. And in this region, it's long been recognized as a really important part of the media mix. I'll be honest, I'd say that we're a little bit slow to that game, and it's something that we needed to catch up on. But we've made huge strides in the last year in developing that aspect of our business. I'm going to tell you more about the results of that later. But why are they a key part of our thinking? Because we recognized that we needed to have a way to make a much more direct connection with our consumers. Brands and marketeers are telling us that What really excites them is the ability not to reach 100,000 vague consumers through a consumer magazine, but to reach 50 really targeted consumers through an event where they can actually market their brands directly to them, and they can see and put names and faces to those consumers. So that budget is there even when the print budget is starting to disappear. And the third one, perhaps a little bit controversially for this region, we firmly believe that the future of print is luxury. We believe that print budgets in this region will concentrate over time into the luxury space. And there's a fundamental reason for that. There's no tradition here of print magazines with large circulations. Titles have got no second revenue stream to fall back on. As I said earlier, it's print ads or nothing. And also, if we're honest, many of them have no audience. You know, a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. The rise in the importance of auditing, the BPA was talking earlier, the rise in the importance of auditing as a function of digital is something that's going to expose, I think, a lot of titles and drive a lot of people to the wall. As the market becomes more transparent, as somebody who's doing programmatic can see clearly the data chain of value that they're getting from publishers, so they're going to start asking the same questions about their print spend. And if you can't prove it, then you're going to be in trouble. And I think, in contrast, the luxury titles, particularly in the Middle East, where there's a huge and growing appetite for luxury goods, they can expect to see continued support in print because they can really prove that they've got a valued audience here. The size of the audience as well is less important than the quality. We know for some of our magazines that we have perhaps 1,000 really engaged consumers, but those 1,000 really engaged consumers are worth 100 each of consumers in the rest of the world because of their spending power in something like luxury watches. So you've got to be able to demonstrate the quality of that audience, and that's going to be one of the most important factors going forward. But crucially, what it really means is that we don't want to swap the problem of print advertising for the problem of digital advertising. In other words, it's no good saying, I've gone from 95% print advertising to 95% digital advertising. You're just swapping one problem from another for another. When the digital ad market goes down the pan, then you have no backup. What we really want is a balanced portfolio, and I think if I had to sum up my job in one sentence, my job is really about reducing risk for the company. It's not about developing new brands, all the other stuff that we talked about. My fundamental of my job is spreading the risk of our business. And I do that by developing more and more revenue streams. And if you think about all the things that we've heard about today from publishers, it's really about developing as many revenue streams as you possibly can around your brands, and thereby spreading the risk of that opportunity. And it's the shift to digital that's really making me sit up and take notice of this. Andy's presentation showed us what the possibilities are in the digital world in Arabic, and you look at the scale of the audience, and it just doesn't compare to what you can achieve in English, particularly when you think that if I'm launching a website in English here, then I'm competing not just against local publishers, I'm competing against the world, something that was mentioned earlier on. So I've got to make sure that I've got a really good hyper-local component to my site if I'm going to be successful, which is fine, but even then my opportunity is limited to the 8 million people who live in this region and speak English. Whereas if I'm in Arabic, I can reach potentially 200-300 million people across the region with a similar investment. So it seems to me that Arabic is a much better opportunity. It's much less well developed, and there's really an opportunity there for scale. You're going to hear tomorrow from, on one of the panels, from a guy called Omar Khalifa. I don't know whether he's here anywhere. Is he? No? You'll hear from him tomorrow from Egypt. In Egypt, I decided when I heard he was coming to look up what the demographics are of a nation like Egypt. 88 million people in Egypt. 61% of them are under 30. And if you think about how many of those under 30-year-olds have or aspire to own a smartphone and will be basically a millennial, acting like a millennial, only ever operating on their smartphone, and you can see that the opportunity in a market like Egypt for digital Arabic content is just massive. Far bigger than we could ever achieve in English. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the factors that have been influencing us. Let me now just very quickly rattle through the 5 steps that we've taken to transform the business and what the outcomes have been. And firstly, this may sound bizarre, but the first one was to fix the print bit, because we recognized the military principle. I think it's some of the more intellectual people in the room can tell me if it's Clausewitz. Is it? Barry's nodding, so that must mean it's true. Which is that before you expand, you must make your base secure. In other words, before I go to my management board and say, I need loads of money to invest in digital and events and all the rest of it, I have to show them that I've got a stable profit from my print business. And I couldn't do that with the portfolio we had. So we completely revitalized the print portfolio. We relaunched all the titles, we redesigned them. In some cases, we changed the editorial teams, and we even actually launched some new print titles as well. We took one of our most established brands, Wheels, and launched it in Arabic, and we've started to diversify the portfolio into luxury as well, and more on that in a minute. And what we've done there is we've delivered a new approach to our titles that enabled us to maximize the opportunity presented by print and therefore maximize the cushion from which to invest. And that kind of also met our grow and extend objectives on our little diagrams, so we're able to tick those. And also in print, just to show that we're serious about believing that print is luxury, and I'm giving you a world exclusive. We've not announced this yet to anybody, so we announce it here today live at FIPP, that we will launch next month our first big women's lifestyle luxury magazine, Citizen K, which will launch in March. That was a deal facilitated by John Cabal, who's somewhere in the room here. You'll see there's John over there. Thanks, John. So that's going to happen in March, and that's going to be our first foray into women's luxury lifestyle. Already very, very, very successful, lots of great ad bookings. And we have Watch Time as well, which we launched last year. So we're starting to build a portfolio in the luxury space to build that future-proofed cushion of print revenue for the future, so that we know that even then when we diversify into other areas, we've got print in our revenue mix. Next, and this is a little bit of one that's unique to us, but it might also be worth looking around your own businesses, because this does happen in large organizations. We realized that it was crucial to be able to offer a 360-degree approach to our clients and also to have the right brand on our business. Now, in the case of Gulf News, we had two separate divisions doing publishing. We had magazines and we had publishing. Publishing was doing contract publishing and newspaper supplements. Very, very lucrative business. Very, very well respected editorially, really, really nice company, but completely separate from the magazine business. We recognized that if we were going to have a credible offering to advertisers in the future, we needed to create a single face to the market. So we merged those two businesses together. We consolidated all of the print and related digital media, other than the main newspaper, into a single division. It was a really complicated exercise. It involved 140 staff. It took us about a year to complete. Had about 30 brands involved in there, a whole bunch of different activities. But we've come out of it with a leaner and much more clearly defined organization, much better equipped to cope with the future demand of the business. And crucially, we concentrated our business around genres, genre-based businesses, to try and develop much better interactions with the market around those genres, and you'll see some of the results of that in a minute. We also rebranded the company. We've moved away from being a magazine business. We're now known as a publishing business. It may sound like a small change, but it's a really crucial way in which we present ourselves to the market as nothing necessarily tied to a specific medium, but just about the business of publishing. Sorry. Peter Kreisky this morning spoke about the importance of cultural change as a key driver of overall change, and I really thoroughly endorse this approach, and I'd even extend it a bit further to cover people more generally. I think we spent a lot of time over the last year looking at culture, knowledge, and values, and some of my staff who are in the room are probably thinking we didn't quite get all of it right, but we're trying. For our values, we're rolling out an entirely new approach to this, and we've been influenced by a guy called Jay Wilkinson. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Jay Wilkinson. He's the president of a company called Firespring, and you can look at his TED talk on values on YouTube. Really one of the most interesting things I've ever seen. What he basically does is he says that most of the values that companies come up with are basically nonsense. So how many of you have ever worked in a company that had as a value respect? We will respect our co-workers and we will respect our clients. I bet most of you have seen it on a values chart somewhere. But that's a given. Would you work in a company that doesn't respect you or doesn't respect your clients? You know, things like that are just part of what a company should be. Instead, he's suggesting that you should try to come up with things that make you different, that really make you a place that you want to work. One of the ones that we're just about to start rolling out in our new set of values, which is happening in a couple of weeks' time, is to be happy and fun. We recognize that if people think the workplace is happy and a fun place to work, then they'll want to come to work and they'll want to, do well and they'll want to have fun at work. So things like that are something that we're starting to roll out in the business to try and make sure that we have a workforce that is really engaged in our transformation. And for culture, shouldn't do that. We've been working hard, to embed digital in particular into people's routines. So we've just gone through a huge process over the last 3 months of really embedding digital in the organization. And that's meant things like giving editorial teams digital KPIs, actually asking them to set their own digital KPIs was the most valuable part of that. Getting them to produce for a week, see how much they can produce, set a target, stick to it. We now have, or just installing analytics screens in all of the editorial departments so that an editor can sit there and see in real time what their web traffic is doing. We have weekly digital editorial meetings. We share our knowledge. We share our experience. We look at social media. We look at what worked and what didn't work. And that's a complete revolution from just 3 or 4 months ago, where we were entirely focused, the editorial teams and the business as a whole was focused on what went in that month's magazine. And again, I take great delight in stealing all of my ideas from other people. I stole that from Hearst, months to moments. Perfect. Absolutely right. Stop thinking about months, start thinking about moments. Don't want to steal Duncan's thunder, but that was definitely something that resonated with us. And finally, you've got to train your staff. It is the best investment you can make in your company is training, because who wants to go out there? Where's the motivation in going out there and hiring a whole bunch of new people to do digital? Everybody's going to hate them, because they're all young and knowledgeable and they're the future of the company. You're probably going to hate them because they're not, your people. Much better to take the people that you've got, much more motivating, to retrain them, to show them how digital can work, and to get everybody focused on that. And I think that's something that is really, really important. Let me come on down to events. I'm not going to steal the thunder of my colleague Katie, who's going to speak tomorrow on this, but just a little bit about our events business and what happened. So last year we started. In 2014 we had our one event, we had our Wheels Car of the Year, and in 2015 we did 30. Alvaro mentioned the Atlantic doing 125. How many people do they have doing that? 8, 9, 10. We have one doing 30. So you can achieve 1.5. Apologies, Deborah. So 1 to 1.5. But basically, with a very small team doing an enormous amount of work, you can build an events business from nothing. And on some of our brands, events is now 25% of the revenue, as was mentioned earlier. So it is possible to do it. And they don't all have to be big, glitzy things like awards ceremonies. You can go right the way down and do very, very small things. We have the most successful strand of events that we run is Mummy Mornings, which is the ones on the left there that you can see, a mother and baby. You're going to hear a lot more about that tomorrow. But basically, by doing smaller events more regularly, you can make as much money as you can from doing one large event, less regularly. Why do we do it? Well, we're able to directly engage with consumers. We're able to get data from them that we can then use with advertisers. We can basically build new revenue streams that are not open to us in other ways. One of the things that Katie's going to tell you about tomorrow is a thing called the Christmas market, where we were selling stands to people like a fete. But that's a different source of revenue, crucially, for us. How do we differentiate ourselves in events? In a competitive market? Well, for us, there's 2 aspects. For competitive events like awards, we sat down and looked at the market and realized that we needed a market positioning that was different from everybody else. So we've ensured that in line with our overall editorial values for our organization, that our awards events are scrupulously impartial. And we make that a big factor in the way we describe and market those events. That's not to say that other events are not impartial. They don't perhaps shout about it in quite the way that we do. We had a great thing recently with our Inside Out awards, where the title sponsor didn't win their category, which I think was the first time that ever happened in an awards event in Dubai anywhere. And it was a sort of hush and a sort of moment of revelation around the room. It's like, okay, that's the way you really mean it. That's actually what you're going to do. It's like, yeah, we do mean it. And that's a crucial thing, because if you're coming new to the market, you can't just go in and do the same thing that everybody else has done. You've got to have a point of difference. And the second one, for audience-based events, you've really got to focus on attracting enthusiasts as a point of difference, we decided. You can't just go in and do the same that everybody else does, have the Dubai social scene there. You've got to have people who are really engaged with the product or the brand, and that will deliver better results. So on the right there, you can see 3 guys at our watch time event. Those are, the guy in the middle runs a watch shop, and the guy on the left runs Rivoli watches, and the guy on the right is from a watch brand. And basically, we get a room full of enthusiasts. So rather than get 1,000 people or 100 people even sipping cocktails and eating canapes, we get 20 people, but each one of those 20 people can afford to buy a £20,000 watch, and we know because we vetted them in advance. And that's as valuable to the brands as having 100 people in the room that they're not sure who they are. So that approach is paying dividends. We expect events to have an even greater impact this year. We'll probably do 50 instead of 30 this year, and it's really an important part of our portfolio. And finally, and most importantly, just a few minutes left, so let me just wrap up. I wanted to tell you about our digital strategy. So much, what we found here is that so much of the business of digital and so many of the companies that come and see you. As you can imagine, as a publishing business, we get inundated with suppliers wanting to come and see us, and it's great because it's always get great ideas from suppliers, and sometimes we use their products, and it's fantastic. But they all come in with the same basic assumption. We actually had consultants in who came in with the same basic assumption. You've got lots of traffic, you just don't know what to do with it. Like, no, I got no traffic. So don't tell me what to do with traffic, tell me how to get traffic. And nobody was really able to come and give us a step-by-step roadmap for how to get traffic. So we sat down and thought, okay, we can do this ourselves. We'll work it out ourselves. So we came up with basically the idea that there are 3 key contributing factors to getting traffic, and this is what we're working on right now. We think it's a function of 3 disciplines and getting 3 things right. The first is technology. You've heard this a lot. I'm prepared to stand up here and say I was wrong. I remember seeing at a FIPP conference, it must have been 12 years ago, maybe more, the CEO of Rogers stood up on stage. Peter might remember. The CEO of Rogers stood up on stage and said, technology is crucial to a publishing business. And I'm going, no. You're never going to be as good as Google. Why would you do technology? Just buy it. I was wrong. Technology is absolutely integral to what you are as a publishing business, and you have to have good control over your technology and ability to customize it, and crucially, the ability to deliver it in-house. Why? Because it helps you to create good products, differentiated products, and to add functionality, and it's increasingly just an integral part of a publisher's expertise. Marketing, the second strand, that's the thing that attracts people to your site, very obviously. And then content, the glue that keeps them there and keeps them coming back. So we just tried to think of it in those 3 things. And we started with content. And as I mentioned before, big focus on editorial KPIs, big focus on analytics, getting the teams really delivering content. Now we're looking at technology. We're looking at delivering a new platform that's responsive using HTML5, moving away from editorial workflow. This is something that came up in one of the earlier presentations about throwing what you know out the door. That's very much the case with us. We sat down recently and we couldn't figure out what the problem was. We think we've cracked content. We're producing quite good quality content, a lot of it, starting to get some traction, really good. But the problem for us now is technology. How do we deliver better products? And we've been sitting down thinking, what is the problem here? Why can't we crack this problem? We realized it was because we were working with an inbuilt assumption that we needed to throw out the window. And the inbuilt assumption was that we needed our editorial workflow that we'd had in magazines to power our websites. And somebody said, why? Why do you need that? You don't need any of that. All you need is a person sat in front of a screen typing to begin with. Stop thinking like you're a big company and start thinking like what a small company would do. And a small company would sit there and just post stuff to the website. And we're like, yeah, okay. So now we've completely done a 360-degree turn in the way we think about technology, and we're focused purely on what the technology is that we need rather than what the technology is that would fit with what we've got right now. Because what we've got right now probably doesn't work for digital. And the next focus for us will be marketing, SEM, and social in particular. We have a pretty good social presence, several 100,000 likes across our portfolio on Facebook, really good levels of engagement, getting some fantastic things in video. 10-second video in particular, that's our finding so far. 10-second video on Facebook works. Everybody looks at it. We've done 10-second video. Sharon Parsons and her team who are here from Inside Out, they did a 10-second video flipping through the last issue, and it got 20,000 organic views on Facebook within a day. Unheard of for us to get that amount of reach and that amount of engagement. So video on social is really, really working, and just using that now as a tool to drive people to the website is really important. Social performance is a key part of our digital editorial meetings as well. So when you sit down and do your editorial meetings, the biggest lesson from this is your editorial meetings now need to be print at the back, digital at the front, and really talk about digital first. And the benefits of this new approach can be seen in our newest launch. I urge you all to go and have a look at gntech.ae. This was a website that didn't exist, the concept for it didn't even exist on December the 1st of 2015. We sat down with the editorial team. This evolved actually from our newspaper supplements business. We realized that in newspaper supplements we were publishing about 10 supplements a year in the field of technology. And we thought, okay, that's a niche, that's a vertical we can play in. So we had a great editorial team there in the supplements business who really picked up the ball and ran with it. And they said, you know what, we're just going to go and build a site for this. And we used it as an opportunity to test a new approach to technology. In this case, just using WordPress. So the team went away and they built the site in 10 days. They started the project on December the 1st. They launched the site on January the 3rd. Less than 30 days end-to-end editorial concept, design, and delivery. So the site is now live in the market. Well, the last time we developed websites, it took us 9 months. So you can see that the approach is much better. And crucially, we launched with a commercial partner. We went out to market and we said, we're developing this new site. We've got a clear editorial strategy and a clear vision. You've already seen the brand in print. You know what it is. Do you want to sponsor it? So we got a sponsor who paid for the entire cost of the project in the first day. So it broke even on day one. It's got the highest time on site of any of our portfolio and the lowest bounce rate as well. So this is really a fantastic project. It also won, dare I mention the competition, Chris, WANIFRA. It won a WANIFRA award as well for being one of the best new websites in the Middle East. So really fantastic project from beginning to end and something that we want to do more of. My timer's at 0, and so are my slides. So I'm just going to give you a very quick summary of what I've just said. Basically, we're only halfway through the transformation. We started as a small print-focused company, and we're well on the way to becoming a multi-platform, brand-focused publishing company. And that's something that we hope will be complete in the next couple of years. So I hope that you found that useful. If you have any other comments or questions, please come and see me afterwards at the drinks reception. But just wanted to say thank you very much. Thank you.